has been an amazing moment in our lives since we began to move into quarantine, when we moved into isolation and we moved into masks that were created by COVID-19. However, COVID-19 began to unearth many of the injustices and brokenness that have always been a part of our communities. For me and for C-TAC, it was also wrestling with the fact that we were dealing with not just one pandemic, but COVID has kept us to understand that those who were most disadvantaged and most impacted by COVID were also those who were suffering in many ways because of racism and economic injustice. And it caused us to ask the question, who are we? Especially C-TAC, who had come into existence because it wanted to transform the way we care for each other, the way we respond to each other, especially when we're moving through serious moments in our lives, serious illnesses, advanced illnesses, and death. How do we care for one another? We can transform the way in which we are present with and for each other as we move through these pandemics. It was already there in our mission statement. It was already there in our commitment. First, we looked at all of the parts that make up our board, our staff, our member organizations, all of us who have come together around the table on C-TAC. The second thing we asked is, let's take a look at those things that we know still contribute to the brokenness, the injustices that block us from achieving our mission and our moonshot. And the third thing we asked ourselves was, what does it mean for us now to create equity? Knowing that everybody is not in the same place. We're not on a level playing field. That there are those who have most been disenfranchised by the system. And that as we looked at it, and that's why we even put in our mission statement, especially those who are the sickest and most vulnerable, because we understood that there were those who have been disadvantaged and in a different place. Even while we're quarantined, we're working on how we can be communities of care together. Even while we're in isolation, we're still working to figure out how we can take the sum total of all that we have and put it together in a way that can create what I think Dr. King called the beloved community. The pandemics came at the right time. C-TAC's mission, moonshot, and even reason for being was right on in terms of what it was asking. How do we care for one another when times are hard? How do we care for one another when there are injustices? How do we care for one another when we are, in fact, figuring out a way that for all of us to exist, for all of us to exist, it means all of us have to be working with care and hope and community for each other.
My name is Tom Kasumpis. I'm the co-chair and co-founder of C-TAC. We are so excited to welcome you to a summit unlike any that we've ever hosted before. As we continue to face the COVID-19 pandemic, we have transitioned to a virtual format to ensure the safety of our participants. While we miss seeing all of you in person, this new platform allows us to reach a wider and more diverse audience than ever before. In 2019, we announced a moonshot goal to ensure a high quality of life for 12 million people with serious illness by 2030. Since then, we've dealt with unimaginable challenges, from the pandemic to a reckoning with longstanding racial and economic injustice across every sector of society. These challenges have strengthened our belief in the importance of the moonshot and in our movement's ability to achieve it. Those with serious illness are even more vulnerable now than they were when we first announced the goal, and we must work harder than ever to ensure that they receive the support and care they need. This pandemic comes alongside a long overdue national conversation about systemic injustice in the healthcare system and elsewhere. The inequities now at the top of our minds have in fact persisted for generations, preventing those in communities of color and others who have been marginalized from accessing high quality care. Our field must commit to reshaping the care continuum so that it works for everyone. During this time of urgent need, we've been encouraged by the swift steps taken by our partners at CMS and the administration, and by our serious illness allies on Capitol Hill. Amidst a near closing down of the economy, access to a variety of critical services has been mostly maintained and, in the process, aided by common sense bipartisan policymaking, we are seeing real innovation blossom, particularly around telehealth and home-based care, two huge issues for the seriously ill. We are advocating for a more community-focused approach to care, something the pandemic has shown us is more important now than ever. We've always known that non-medical support, like meal delivery, transportation, and housing support, have a major impact on the quality of life for people with serious illness. C-TAC will continue to work alongside our partners in Congress and the administration to focus and advocate for policies that advance community-focused care. We also look forward to hearing your insights on this approach in the days to come. We may not be able to gather together face-to-face for this year's summit, but we believe strongly that this movement is even stronger than ever.
My name's Dr. Lucy Kalanathy, and I'm so thrilled to be joining you today. I am an internal medicine physician and a member of the C-TAC board, on which I'm really proud to serve. I lost my husband to stage 4 lung cancer, and my current role at Stanford is in COVID clinic, treating COVID patients. I treat patients at Stanford, and like I said, now specifically in COVID clinic, people who have just been diagnosed with COVID, and we follow them over the period of a few weeks to support their recovery and help them get the care they need if they're not doing well. And I guess I would share two important observations in this work. One is the population that I see in my clinic has radically shifted to include frontline workers who lack protections at work or space to quarantine appropriately, certainly family medical leave and things like that, and a lot of people who are undocumented or who don't have access to healthcare coverage. And it's just been very striking because I can see immediately the ways in which the lack of supports and structural racism in the United States and discrimination, certainly anti-Black racism, and then obviously lack of protections for immigrants as well, are adding layers of suffering on top of suffering. And the extent of the injustice in the pandemic is very clear, and that's not even to mention what's happening for everybody economically too. So I guess this is all by way of saying it's a terrifying, sad moment, and also one in which C-TAC's leadership and goals are more vital than ever, and C-TAC's role has taken on even greater importance, certainly underlying what's exciting about the moonshot. So I think we can all feel that in our bones, and feel really good about joining together today to uncover something hopeful in this moment, where we can help people now and we can help people into the future. So thanks for joining us.
I'm Bill Novelli, co-chair of C-TAC, and I want to welcome you to our national summit. As Americans, we can all see and lament that these are troubled times. It's not just the toxic partisanship of Washington and our state capitals. It's all across the country, urban and rural, from sea to shining sea. We're experiencing serious divisions in race, religion, politics and policy, culture and climate action, and certainly in healthcare delivery during this time of COVID. As difficult as things are, we need to recognize two things. First, these periods of strife in American history have been cyclical, not permanent. And second, we have a way to overcome all this. In a word, it's leadership. Leadership at all levels, from all organizations and tribes. C-TAC is about improving advanced illness and end-of-life care in America. Now, how can we, working together with all of you, provide leadership in these times? Our answer is to recognize that equity is at the core of our vision, that all Americans, especially the sickest and most vulnerable, receive comprehensive, high-quality, person-centered care that is consistent with their goals and values and honors their dignity. We have a C-TAC Equity Task Force, co-chaired by the Reverend Tyrone Pitts and the Reverend Yvonne Delk, working hard on this challenge. The task force recognizes that equality is lacking for the marginalized in our healthcare system. This is an institutional problem, and racial injustice is clearly a part of it. And therefore, we must achieve systemic change in policies and practices with measurable outcomes. And this will only be possible by working in a broad coalition, a coalition of leadership, including health systems, health plans, providers, and community care networks. This means all of you and all of us working together for equity. 20 years ago, Juan Williams wrote an excellent biography of Thurgood Marshall. It's still a good read today. Juan concluded by saying that America was growing ever more diverse and that the future test of inclusiveness would be socioeconomic equity. We still have a long way to go. But as we travel toward an equitable nation, we can do something right now about equity in American healthcare. So let's show the leadership and let's make it happen.
This year's summit will focus on the development of our Equity Task Force that seeks to challenge the inequities in healthcare and expose the systemic racism that is embodied in the healthcare delivery system, as well as the inequities in community health services for the most vulnerable. The summit will also discuss re-envisioning C-TAC's moonshot and this exciting and dynamic movement during these challenging times of COVID-19 to transform healthcare to ensure that all persons with advanced illness will receive the quality of health services that they need, desire, and deserve. As we participate in this year's summit, we are excited about the possibilities of C-TAC's moonshot and its impact in influencing public policy, changing public opinion, and its coalition members, providing community care for the most vulnerable in society.
Well, I think about how much has changed since we last saw each other in Minneapolis at the 2019 summit. I think of the lives of so many lost lives. I think of the suffering of so many from COVID-19, from racism, from serious illness. And as we look ahead at 2021, we know it'll be a momentous year. A year where the life and the quality of life of so many Americans really will hang in the balance. And the question for us together is, how will we respond? That brings us to the summit today. At the 2019 summit, we came up with a very ambitious goal that by 2030, a moonshot goal, 12 million Americans living with serious illness would have high quality of life. And we developed a community model to get us there. And the field should be so happy, so proud of its efforts in making progress towards that goal this year, despite historic challenges. We have new payment models coming online from CMS that are really strongly bipartisan. We have states stepping up states such as Oregon, Arizona, California, North Carolina, to name a few, that are testing new models of care. And we have really strong faith community-led programs such as the Alameda County Care Alliance that are spreading, and new leaders coming into the field, coming into the movement. Now, we are in a very difficult time, and Reverend Delk has correctly characterized it as a triple pandemic. Yes, COVID-19, but racism and economic injustice as well. And if you're a little like me, there are days when it feels overwhelming and it's hard to know where to start. But I think we can borrow a technique from navigation to get out. So if you're ever lost in the backcountry, the way to get out is by working from two known points and navigating from there. So the two known points, what are those for the moment that we're in? Well, number one, equity. Equity was built into our vision statement as C-TAC when we were founded in 2010, that all Americans, but especially the sickest and the most vulnerable, should have high quality of life when they have a serious illness. Now's the time to put that into action. You're going to hear a lot of ideas discussed around that at this summit, and we have a task force to move that forward. And the second known point, well, that's payment reform. We are making progress, but we have a long way to go. So many of the models you'll hear about at the summit are not sustainable in the current system. They're funded through charity, they're funded as demonstrations, they're funded as pilots. But we need to find a way to connect local action with state and federal policy reform as a path to sustainability. These are our two jumping off points for C-TAC, both for the summit and the discussions that you'll hear, but also informing the agenda for a momentous 2021. So thank you for joining us, and welcome to the 2020 summit.